What we've got here are guitars that are drifting a tiny bit out of time. Let's hear. So we'd like to fix the timing on those. The first thing we should know about Reaper is that if we hold down the Alt key, this little arrow appears. Now that allows us to slide the audio back and forward in time, but it doesn't affect the actual box that the audio's in. Okay, so that's a useful tool. So what we would like to do probably is take this guitar slightly in front of the beat, split it, and then hold down the Alt and move it back so that it lines up better. The trouble with that is that when we split it, it makes a crossfade that is literally on the split. Now that's not really what we want. We would like it to crossfade just before the split, so let's undo that. If we look in the actions list, I'm assuming that you will have SWS extensions installed. We want to search for split items. So this is the function we're looking for here. Split selected items, add edit cursor with crossfade on the left. Let's see what happens if we run that action. So if we zoom in close, we can see that it crossfaded to the left of the split, which means we get a crossfade just before the transient of the guitar happens. So that's perfect, that's what we want. Now I've made a button down here on Reaper, and it is that function. If we go in to Customize Toolbar and have a look at what that function is, and there we see that's what it is. There's a very specific reason why I've got it set up as a button, because if I right click on the button, then it becomes highlighted. Now the cursor has a little A on it. Now anytime I click on something, I get that option, and then I hold down Alt and I slide the guitar to where I want it to be. So there's another one. Let's slide that to where we want it to be. Let's use Shift to move the crossfade. Find the best place for it. Holding down Alt, moving the guitar forward. And we carry on through the guitars like this until we have the timing of all the guitars exactly the way we want them. Let's zoom these guitars away in so that I can show you what's going on. This section here of the guitar sound, this is what we call the transient. This is actually the sound of the pick hitting the guitar, and then when it turns into something that's more recognizable as a wave, this is the sustained part of the guitar sound, the note. Now, I'm not sure whether whenever you do splice the guitar, should you move this part of the note to here, or should you move the transient to here? I'd never be quite sure, although from looking at my guitar playing, it always seems a bit more common that when something sounds perfectly on time, it's this part that's on time, and the transient is slightly before the grid. But if anybody's got any alternative theories to that, please let me know. I'm always trying to improve this process. Personally, I've just found it a wee bit visually easier to line up this part of the guitar sound to the grid rather than the transient. Now, if we look at this note here, now let's zoom in a bit more. The grid is currently set to 8 notes. If we change it to 16th notes, we can see that this note, and this note are 16th notes. Okay, but if we change it to 32, we can see that these notes are less than a 32nd. This one's perfect. These ones are less than a 32nd out of time. Even if we go to 64, they're still close enough. So I think they're within the tolerance of what's acceptable in timing. We have to be judicious about what we correct and what we don't correct. And I think in this case, this guitar is verging on being out, but this guitar, I don't think it should be fixed. So let's hear the end result. Okay, so a couple of things to point out about this technique. First of all, nothing beats the sound of a well-played guitar that's nice and tight, because the human feel on it gives it a bit of a loosey-goosey, which is important. When you have the rhythm guitars panned left and right, you want some differences in them. So don't overdo this technique or it'll take some of the life out of the performance. The second thing about it is that it works a lot better if you've got a clean recording of the guitar. In other words, if you were miking up an amp, also take a DA so that you can group those two tracks together and use the clean track as your visual aid. I don't need to do that because I use amp sims, so I naturally have the clean guitar in my DAW to work with. Have fun using this technique, but don't use it as an excuse for bad playing. Try and nail the performance as best you can first, because nothing beats that. But Sometimes needs must, and that's how you do it. So I did mention that I made my own custom toolbar buttons in Reaper. We can't skip over that. If you're interested, I'll show you how that's done now. Inside Reaper, we go to Options and scroll down to Show Reaper Resource Path in Explorer Finder. It opens this folder, and inside that there's a folder called Data, and inside that there's a folder called Toolbar Icons. Now we can see I've already made some custom icons of my own. This is where all the standard Reaper icons are saved as well. We have access to this folder within the toolbar menu, so that's where we should save our icon once we make it. I use GIMP. You can use Photoshop or any other photo editing software, but why pay for it when you can use GIMP for free? So when we're making an icon, the important rule here is that on the horizontal plane, the icon has to be divisible by 3. You can make it any size you want, but it needs to be divisible by 3, and we'll see why in a minute. So just to show you that you can make the icon any size you want, let's make it 300 by 50. So instead of being a square like the default is in Reaper, this will be a wide rectangular button. So that's quite small. Let's zoom in. If we select the first 100 pixels and let's fill that in, we have 3 different sections. Let's fill this one in a different color. So the idea here is that we're making 3 different icons. So they have to be exactly the same size. The first one is what the button will look like by default. The second one is what the button will look like as you hover over it. And the third one will be what the button will look like when you click on it. Okay, so we can put anything we want. And you can see in the first one, I'm going to have a transparent background. So just to show you that you can do anything you want, I have downloaded a PNG of Stranger Things. So let's copy that to a new layer and copy it again to another new layer. Let's move these across to each section. To line them up perfectly. Now we can export that as a PNG, and we want to export it to that folder that we found in Reaper. Let's go back to Reaper. We could either put it in any of these custom toolbars here, but let's just open a new custom toolbar. This is a new blank one. And if we click Edit Me, we can go Add. Select any action you want. Let's do our one, Split Selected Items with crossfade on the left. Now we can change the icon. Let's change the icon, and we should find our Stranger Things icon in here now. And there it is. Apply. Okay. Now we can see that the Stranger Things icon, when we hover over it, changes, and when we click on it, it changes again, and it has indeed done what we expected it to do. Let's right click and see if that right click functionality happens. Okay, so that's how you make a custom toolbar. If you have any questions or ideas for improvement of this technique, please let me know. Thanks so much, guys.